Hi, my name is Delia, and I am freaking out. In the Moon Age Daydream, not in real life. I'm actually pretty calm for the most part. David Bowie is perhaps one of the most enigmatic figures in the history of popular music. He's also one of the most renowned artists of all time. I typically like to keep things objective, but even my mom likes him, and this is her taste in music. So I feel like it kind of holds some weight when I say that. Most of Bowie's life was marked by his lengthy musical career, spanning from his debut album in 1969 to his final album, An Untimely Death, in 2016. During that time period, he released some of the most famous singles in all of music history. He appeared as himself and other characters in the general discourse of pop culture, and he left behind a legacy that continues to inspire musicians to this day. For example, one of his famous hunky-dory tracks, Changes, was immortalized on Shrek 2. It doesn't matter that he never got knighted, he got into Shrek 2, damn it. The next two albums were met with somewhat mixed reception, but Hunky Dory was where he really started to find his groove writing songs and giving amazing vocal performances. And while Hunky Dory received great reception, it failed to chart both in the UK and the US because of lack of promotion from Bowie's label. It's almost like all of Bowie's previous albums was missing an omnisexual alien alter ego named Ziggy Stardust. Oh yeah, his next album had that, and it did really well. Bowie struck gold in 1972 with his breakout success, The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, a 37-minute glam rock phenomenon. Besides breathing fresh air into the mainstream rock scene, Ziggy Stardust introduced, Ziggy Stardust, the character central to narrative of the album, also serving as Bowie's stage persona during the subsequent tours that followed. And that's where I transition the conversation today to focus on legacy, specifically Bowie's. Why is Bowie so widely remembered today, aside from his hit singles and his collaborations with other musicians? The two-word answer, alter egos. But more specifically, Bowie's most popular albums were popular because of his ability to manipulate various narrative techniques like defamiliarization through his alter egos. That was a long statement, so to break it down, let's just go back to Ziggy Stardust. While Bowie's character was novel, personas weren't anything new in contemporary music, with well-known artists like Bob Dylan and Johnny Cash both relying on narratives and characters in songs to help explore different thematic ideas. These specific identities were written to be vague on purpose. Anybody listening could immerse themselves in the shoes of a coal miner out of work, like in Bob Dylan's North Country Blues. While the United States was steeped in the classic folk tradition of realism, bands across the sea like the Beatles started to toy around with the idea of alter egos. Their experimentation manifested itself in Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club Band, coincidentally released the same day as Bowie's debut. I think we can safely say one was more remembered. What the Beatles did essentially was just create an alter ego version of their band, which they then based an album off of. It was all really lighthearted, just loosely tied together, and after they had become famous, it was more of just like another way of the Beatles pushing boundaries. Bowie was much more theatrical in crafting his onstage personas, going as far as to plan a play based off Ziggy Stardust. It's this plot-centric quality which really put the rise and fall of Ziggy Stardust on the radar. It was unique to say the least, and it was definitely the most narratively cohesive album Bowie had released up to that point, even if it wasn't necessarily marketed as a story. So before I start deconstructing the story and character, I should probably give a quick recap of the tracks. The album opens with 5 years, a track in which all humanity finds out that Earth has 5 years left before it ends forever. Bowie's narration describes the thoughts and observation of a simple bystander to the news, while he also contemplates his own love life and his eventual demise. The second track details an outsider, presumably an alien, and their view of love on Earth, with this next track and the previous both setting the stage for Ziggy to come and introduce himself in the third track, Moon Age Daydream. The next piece, Starman, is a prophecy by Ziggy to the people of Earth that a starman will save Earth from destruction if all the people of Earth just dance, feel it out, have a good time. And dance the people do with the next song, It Ain't Easy, Bowie's cover of the song of the same name by Ron Davies. It ain't easy loosely fits into narrative by juxtaposing Ziggy's ideal version of heaven with the problems he notices across all of Earth. Lady Stardust follows this along, really my personal favorite track, and on the surface level, it addresses Ziggy's alien inspiration, who he bases his personality off of. In other words, if Ziggy is Bowie's alter ego, Lady Stardust is what that alter ego based itself off of. Confusing, I know. Lady Stardust also takes on the taboo subjects of queerness in the glam rock scene. I'm not sure if any of the video clips I've been playing showed anything, but yeah, glam rock definitely wasn't straight. Track 7, Star, details Ziggy's plan for saving the world as a rock and roll star, while track 8 introduces Ziggy's backing band, the Spiders from Mars, trying to warn Ziggy against getting caught up with female fans. The conflict continues into track 9, Ziggy Stardust, where the band complains about Ziggy's egotism and how caught up he is as a rock star, even if he is a good rock star. Suffragette City takes a step back from the whole narrative and focuses on Bowie's bisexuality specifically, while Rock and Roll Suicide closes the record with Ziggy Stardust willingly being teared to pieces by his fans in the Rock and Roll Suicide. The alter ego of Ziggy itself took inspiration from other notable British glam rock pioneers, most notably Mark Bolan, who Bowie references on Lady Stardust. His appearance on Ziggy was shaped by a local hairdresser and fashion designer, and his debut and subsequent rise to fame in 1972 left the world with one question.
Are you a gay? You are gay.
Bowie's sexual orientation was constantly questioned by journalists after his debut as Ziggy, with his previous works' album covers, specifically the dress he wore on The Man Who Sold the World, only further raising eyebrows. Bowie had been prudent in his responses up until 1972, but with Ziggy, all hell broke loose. He told a reporter in 1972 that he had always been gay, later changing it to bisexual, and eventually rescinding what he said in the first interview. Even songs on the rise and fall of Ziggy Stardust reference this taboo subject pretty upfront, like on Suffragette City, where Bowie's alter ego sings about dumping a boyfriend to go after a woman in London. At any rate, Ziggy was meant to be eccentric. Like, he was supposed to be queer in every sense of the word. Following Ziggy's retirement in 1974, Bowie toyed around with other personas like Aladdin Sane, an Americanized version of Ziggy, and Halloween Jack, which, get ready for this, was almost exactly like Ziggy, except he had an eye patch. Scandalous. Bowie's next 3 albums, 4 including Pinups, were more or less building off success with Ziggy. They weren't sellout records by any means, like a particular 80s album I'll get to in a second. They were just more Bowified pop rock, the loosely incorporated personas. In early 1975, Bowie headed to Los Angeles to start shooting for film adaptation of the 1963 novel The Man Who Fell to Earth, with Bowie playing the lead character of an alien who came to Earth to search for water. Yeah, this character wasn't Ziggy. In the years that Bowie spent in LA, aside from filming, he started writing songs for his next release, Station to Station, which was recorded in 1975 at the newly constructed Cherokee Studios, with prominent onlookers like Frank Sinatra giving their input on the album. Around the same time, Bowie was in the middle of a cocaine addiction he picked up prior to his move to LA, later claiming it came close to almost killing him. It was this addiction that not only contributed to the bony look of his next persona, but also the character, introducing the Thin White Duke. If Ziggy Stardust was Bowie exploring the fun and exuberant and sexual side of his persona, then the Thin White Duke was like the polar opposite of that. Partly inspired by the alien character he played in the movie, but also by his cocaine addiction, his psychotic bouts of depression, and his recent dive into black magic. Yeah, the Thin White Duke was like the antithesis of everything which Ziggy was. Sporting black sacks, a white button-up, a stylish waistcoat, and slicked back hair, the Thin White Duke was out of this world, yet down to earth. Cynical, yet yearning. Arrogant, yet still somewhat human. It goes without saying that Bowie wasn't at his best mental state with his persona. Oh, he was also fascist. Yeah, one of the major controversies that arose from this era of Bowie's career was in all of his interviews where he was openly promoting extreme nationalism. He later claimed it was all part of the character he was playing, and I don't doubt that's true, but I definitely think his cocaine addiction had something to do with that. The use of the Thin White Duke alter ego effectively projects the darkest parts of Bowie's mind into a character who then builds a harrowing narrative in Station to Station. The title track deals with various themes of the occult, something that Bowie dived into during his addiction to cocaine. The first verse opens with the lyric, "Here we are, at one magical moment, such as stuff from where dreams are woven." The line "one magical moment" is a double entendre. It references the web of addiction that Bowie found himself caught in. And the use of the term magical moment references the effects of cocaine and how it made the Thin White Duke feel, as if he's living in the magical moment. He's not, though. He's just really high. At the same time, the line's also a desperate imagination that he's spending a magical moment with a lover or a listener. During the time in this album's writing, Bowie's relationship with his then wife Angie had started to deteriorate due to drug use. All the side effects of cocaine and relationship strains had effectively left Bowie empty. The next line, "such as the stuff from where dreams are woven," is a play on the iconic excerpt from Shakespeare's play The Tempest. "We are such stuff as dreams are made on." In the context of the play, it's a line spoken by Prospero, a magician, to his son-in-law, reminding him of the fleeting nature of life after his daughter's wedding. In the context of Station to Station, the Thin White Duke is displaying cynical realism and how temporary all facets of life are. But interestingly enough, the cynicism fits in really well sonically with the album. That's where Bowie's alter ego, the Thin White Duke, shines. Throughout the rest of Station to Station, the listener feels a hanging sense of dread, which is complemented by the White Duke's lyricism, but also by his voice, which is the most raw and strained I've ever heard Bowie sound. Aside from Bowie simply exploring his darkest moments throughout the White Duke, defamiliarization is also widely used throughout Station to Station in songs like Golden Years, TVC 15, and Stay. Defamiliarization is a 20th century concept coined by Russian writer Viktor Shklovsky. The concept revolves around implementing everyday objects, concepts, and places into an abstract setting. TVC 15 is quite possibly the most example use of this technique, and as the story goes, from what Bowie can remember, he was inspired to write it after a longtime friend Iggy Pop told him about a drug-induced hallucination he had about his television set swallowing his girlfriend. Bowie had subsequently stated that he had difficulty remembering a majority of the writing and recording of Station to Station due to the drugs, but whatever was written kind of proves that. Bowie takes something common that we see in our everyday lives, like a television, and uses it in a unique way by framing a story around himself and an imaginary lover who's being eaten alive by a TV. And it's symbolic in nature, obviously, but nonetheless, the song is very eerie. Narratively, the Thin White Duke's self-absorbed songwriting points him to be a deflector. He doesn't take responsibility for his actions. He mourns himself in songs like Wild as the Wind, and his public support for fascism is a form of deflection, which we kind of see in another sect of modern-day politics. Okay, so morally speaking, the Thin White Duke is a sucky person, because he was fully realized at like some of the worst moments of Bowie's life. But if this persona of Bowie taught us anything, it's that even in the most depraved and near-death moments a person can experience, artistry can be found in some shape or form. While not common, Station to Station is an example of drug-related psychosis mixed with awful circumstances leading to a truly moving piece of art. Following Station to Station, Bowie released the Berlin trilogy, Scary Monsters, and then he sold out with Let's Dance, but it was a great sellout. The rest of the 80s and 90s, Bowie's albums fluctuated in quality, with most still being somewhat decent. Heathens in 2002 was his last release before he took a hiatus for over a decade, with his break being broken in 2013 with The Next Day, a nice pop rock callback full of bops that I enjoy making cookies to. And it's a great send-off for Bowie's mainstream, more lighthearted work. His next and final album, Black Star, featured his final persona, and it was a hell of a way to go out. I have very hazy memories of Black Star's release. I was in 6th grade at the time, and if I can remember anything about it, it's that I went to Barnes& and Noble with my dad and sister every Saturday around the time vinyl started getting popular again, so while I was looking at like a Ninjago sets, I'd bump into the vinyl section, which at one point featured Black Star. In the midst of all other vinyls being displayed that had busy covers, Black Star was simply a black star, yet somehow even as a 6th grader that had a 5-second attention span, the cover intrigued me. I didn't hear it for another 5 years, but when I did in 2021 as my first true Bowie listening experience, Black Star blew me away, and I think it's earned its right as my personal favorite David Bowie record. What I didn't realize at the time, however, is that throughout Black Star, as Bowie reflects on mortality, he plays with his most reserved and strange persona yet, the unnamed eye blindfold guy, or as most fans call it, the blind prophet. Bowie had very little promotion for this album, there obviously was no tour, and he was very secretive about his cancer diagnosis, so all we as the public knew about Black Star prior to its release was from the music video's release, with a title track receiving a 10-minute video in 2015. Black Star's release window was also super strange because it came out like 2 days before Bowie died. When I first listened to the album a few years ago, I already knew the context surrounding it and his death shortly afterwards, but something about being introduced to Bowie through a posthumous release like Black Star, such an introspective work, it really gave me a unique insight into the wide artistry which Bowie possesses. What I didn't realize at the time, however, is that throughout Black Star, as Bowie reflects on mortality, he plays with his most reserved and strange persona yet. The unnamed eye blindfold guy, or as most fans call it, the blind prophet. Bowie had very little promotion for this album, there obviously was no tour, and he was very secretive about his cancer diagnosis, so all we as a public knew about Black Star prior to his release was from the music video's release, with the title track receiving a 10-minute video in 2015. The video centers around a storyline which follows a cult of aliens doing some weird sacrifice of an astronaut. There's a lot of shaking involved too for some reason. This video definitely takes the cake for the most unsettling music video I've ever seen, and that includes Human Behavior by Björk. Bowie appears throughout the music video in a super mysterious way where he's singing as his persona of the blind prophet. Bowie's alter ego, the blind prophet, is also his most ambitious yet. By openly discussing the theme of death throughout Black Star, the blind prophet doesn't just represent a different side of Bowie, the blind prophet becomes Bowie. Unlike Ziggy and the White Duke, which were exaggerated facets of Bowie's life, whatever appearances of the blind prophet we receive throughout the 2 music videos he's featured in blurs with songwriting throughout all of Black Star. I think we can start to appreciate his alter ego most on the album's deepest cuts like Black Star and Lazarus, but also in the closing tracks like Dollar Days and I Can't Give Everything Away. In all these songs, the adopted alter ego of the blind prophet simply serves as an artistic expression of his slow death rather than a fully fledged character. In ancient traditions around the world, eyes were either painted or put on dead people's blindfolds as a symbolic gesture of guiding them in the afterlife. Bowie's persona alludes to this transition, with his eyes and sight being a central symbol throughout the 10-minute title track, Black Star. Aside from the symbolism, the track Black Star is interesting in another regard. The song is shrouded in mystery and mysticism that Bowie hadn't touched since the 70s, with a lot of imagery referencing all types of spirituality, but also identity. In many ways, Black Star is a culmination of Bowie's alter egos. There is an entire section of the song where he lists off what he isn't. He isn't a Marvel star, not a pop star, not a white star, he's a black star. And with this line, every ego in Bowie's life is effectively shattered. In life, everything has opposites. Yin and yang, day and night, good Bowie albums and not good Bowie albums. Similarly, math also features inverses. Positive and negative numbers, multiplication and division, derivatives and antiderivatives. So naturally, astronomy follows the same rule, and for a black hole, there's an opposite. A black star. Unlike a black hole, which is devoid of matter, a black star theoretically would be composed of a bunch of matter. And that's what that album is. It's full of life. and death. It's kind of symbolic and really abstract how Bowie combines so many opposites in an album. Reflections on life paired with reflections on death, haunting vocal performances with smooth jazz. Even the album cover is just pure white and pure black. I'm gonna say it, we're never gonna fully figure out Black Star as an album. There's still so many mysteries and missing pieces of the puzzle that only Bowie knew. What we do know is that Black Star is the death of all of Bowie's alter egos. The blind prophet merges with Bowie. It's him. This is his swan song, and what a swan song it is. David Bowie had a lengthy career, yet its impact still managed to be seen across all pop culture. No matter what genre he explored in his 50 years of making music, he always found some unique way to add a Bowie twist onto it. I mean, even Black Star was influenced by To Pimp a Butterfly's use of jazz, which I find really cool. Since Bowie's rise in the 70s, we've seen other multiple personas like Damon Albarn's Tootie for Gorillaz, or Eminem's Some Shady rise in the general pop discourse of music. But we've never seen anything quite so unique and profound as Bowie's. While he was very dramatic, his personas flung the wildest corners of his imagination and mind into the spotlight, making for emotionally familiar, yet odd and peculiar characters. And these characters continue to live on for countless generations throughout David Bowie's albums.